Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Dr. Will Tuttle. He is a author of international bestseller The World Peace Diet, Zen Monk, and visionary advocate for compassionate living. And we'll learn from him how our food choices shape not only our health, but all our spirituality, freedom, and connection to all life. We'll talk a lot about on the healing power of plant-based living, the deep spiritual roots of veganism, and how reclaiming our relationship with food can lead to personal peace and global transformation. Welcome to the show, Dr. Will.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you everyone for watching and for listening in.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show, Dr. Will. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about food, we'll talk about freedom, we'll talk about compassion, and we'll talk about all global transformation. Much more we'll talk about. But before that, let's learn a bit about your journey, your background, your story, so that people know who they are listening to.
Sure, I'm happy to talk. Briefly, I was born and raised right outside Boston, Massachusetts, in a pretty typical family, eating the usual meals of lots of meat, dairy products, eggs, and so forth. And when I was about 7 years old, I asked my mother, "So the food we're eating, is this what everybody eats?" And my mother said, "Oh yeah, that's what everybody eats." And then she left, but then she came back a few minutes later and she said, "I was thinking about your question, and actually there are people who eat differently. They're called vegetarians." And I said, "Oh, okay, well, what is a vegetarian?" And she thought for a minute and she said, "Don't worry about it. You're never going to meet one." And so in my mind, and then she said, "I don't know where they get their protein." And so in my mind, I thought these vegetarians were very rare because my mother never even met one. And I thought they were probably sick and dragging themselves through the dirt and weak. And I was so glad I wasn't one of these ridiculous vegetarians. And so I went on my life, and I did okay. I had the usual problems that kids have. Especially, and my brother and my sister, we had sore throats, runny noses, earaches. I had an appendicitis, had my appendix pulled out at one point. I know most of these things really are related to dairy consumption because we're not little calves. So if we're eating milk or cheese and other products, it's pretty likely that we'll have these problems, acne and other things. But anyway, I remember when I was about 14 years old, I went away to a summer camp in Vermont, which is just north of where we live in the countryside, that had a little farm. And so I learned how to actually catch my chickens and hold them down and cut off their heads and eat the chickens. And, we killed our own animals. And I didn't like doing it, but I thought it was a good thing because at that point I'd gone through 13 years of the most intense indoctrination a person can go through. Every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I was eating not only animal foods, but I was eating a narrative that God gave us certain animals to eat. They don't have a soul like we do. They taste very good. And if you eat them, if you don't eat them, you'll die within 24 hours of a protein deficiency. So I just knew we had to do that. We have to kill certain animals. And I remember also every year, one time we would gather around one of the dairy cows and we would kill her with the gun. And again, it was very bloody. It was, terrible thing. But the guy who owned the whole thing, he said, "Well, she's not giving enough milk now, so we're going to use her for meat. And she's too old." And we'd say, "How old is she?" And he'd say, "She's 5 years old." And cows would naturally live 25 years in nature. But after 5 years on any dairy operation, organic or not, they're worn out because they're kept pregnant and lactating simultaneously, which breaks down the health of any female mammal very quickly. So they get worn out. And one of her daughters, one of the calves on the dairy will become a slave to replace her. So I saw all that, but I could not question it because I was too involved, and I thought that's what we have to do. And I never even imagined you could live without eating animal foods. But when I went away to college, I started to learn more. In my early 20s, I graduated and I started reading books on spirituality. I started reading the Bhagavad Gita, and started meditating. I started doing yoga. This was way back in the early 1970s. And and then I learned about cosmic consciousness, about the possibility to attain spiritual enlightenment. And so I remember going back home and talking to my parents and saying, Mom and Dad, it's possible to attain enlightenment. We're not just here to make money and just struggle and then die. We're here to grow spiritually. And my younger brother, Ed, when I talked to him about this, he said, yes, let's do it. Let's attain cosmic consciousness. That's the most important thing. I was really raised to take over my father's business. He had a whole chain of newspapers, 13 newspapers. And it was a whole big empire. But I told him, no, I don't, we're going to go, we're going to attain cosmic consciousness. And he said, well, how are you going to do that? And we said, it's not difficult. All we have to do is go to California. We thought if we go to California, everybody has cosmic consciousness there. And this was back in 1975. And so we decided we would go to California, but we would not just drive or fly. We would walk the whole way across the entire country, 3,000 miles. And we would do the whole thing with no money. We would do it like the sadhus of India, just walking and meditating, and eventually we would get there. And we discovered a book by Ramana Maharshi from South India, who said, just do self-inquiry. Try to find out, who am I? What am I? What is this? And so that's what we did. We walked about 15 or 20 miles every day. We worked our way west gradually. I would say thousands of times every day, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Just try to go deeper. No, I'm not this body. I'm not this collection of thoughts and feelings. What am I? What is this? And so we eventually, after about a month, we only got as far as Buffalo, New York. And so we decided to head south. So we just walked south again for quite, many weeks, a few months, all the way down through upstate New York, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee. We got down and we discovered a community called The Farm. And The Farm in 1975 was the largest hippie commune in the world. They had about 900 people there, and they were all from California. So we felt like we met them in the middle, kind of. And they were all vegetarians. And we were not vegetarians. We would eat whatever we could get. We had no money. We would just, whatever people would give us, we would eat. But they told us how important it is to be vegetarian. And there was no meat. Actually, there was no meat, no dairy, no eggs, no honey. So they were really vegans, but back in 75, no one knew the word vegan. So they just said, we're vegetarians. And they said the reason was because most of the food we grow, we feed to animals while people are starving. So they were doing it out of compassion for other human beings, so there would be less starvation, because we can feed everyone if we would just eat plant-based foods. And then they also said, do you know what the animals go through, how they're treated? And they told me about the cruelty to the poor animals, the cows and pigs and chickens. But it was this wonderful having an example of 900 people. Every day I ate with them. And so I've never eaten meat in my life since 1975, when I was with those people. I've never eaten meat. So I became a vegetarian. And then we continued on. We ended up in a Zen Buddhist meditation center in Alabama, then a Tibetan Buddhist meditation center in San Francisco. And then in 1980, I learned more about dairy products and eggs, so I became a vegan. So I've been a vegan since 1980. So that's about 45 years. And then a few years later, I decided to become a monk, a Zen Buddhist monk. So I went to South Korea, I shaved my head. I was living in this monastery. And I realized that for the second time in my life, I was in a vegan community. But in this case, they had been practicing veganism for 750 years. Since the 1200s, there was no meat, no dairy, no eggs, no wool, no silk, no leather, no killing of insects. It was all based on practicing ahimsa, the old Sanskrit word that means non-harmfulness. And so then I realized that if we're really serious about spirituality, about creating a world of kindness and love and abundance and caring, if we really care about creating a world that works for everyone, then we should really give compassion to animals and let them live their lives. The spiritual teachings always say, whatever you sow, so shall you reap. It's called karma. Whatever we put out comes back. So if we're going to insist on abusing animals, imprisoning them, force medicating them, all of that, it's going to happen to us. So I eventually came back to the United States. I decided not to be a monk, and I got my PhD at Berkeley. I taught college for a number of years in all kinds of philosophy and in world religions. And I realized that all the world religions agree on the golden rule: don't do to others what you wouldn't want to have done to yourself, and karma. Don't Whatever you sow, you will reap. So if we want to be healthy, we should let others be healthy. If we want to be happy, let others be happy. If we want to be loved, be loving. If we want to have an abundant life, be generous, right? This is the wisdom, and it goes way back into ancient India originally, I think. And so uh, gradually I realized that this is the way to live, and I've been doing it now for 45 years. And then I wrote the World Peace Diet and other books: Food for Freedom, The World Peace Way. I've been traveling and speaking and giving lectures now for 40 years, promoting these ideas, and it's really been fantastic. I'm very grateful. The World Peace Diet has been translated now into 19 languages. So my wife and I have traveled all over the world, spreading this message, and it just gets better all the time. It's really a wonderful life.
Wonderful,
So,
wonderful.
yeah.
Really a wonderful life, as you put it. So, Dr. Will, I want to understand it. What is it that you want to, some you mentioned, but to understand it better in your words, what is it that you want to tell the world? What is it that you are telling the world with what you are doing?
Right. Well, the basic thing is I'm sharing the good news. The good news is that all of us as human beings have been given a wonderful gift. We've been given the gift of a physical body that does not require any animals to be imprisoned and abused and killed in order to get the nutrients that we need to be healthy and thrive and celebrate our lives on this beautiful earth. Of course, the problem is that we've all been raised in a society where we've been told by our parents and teachers and friends and neighbors and relatives and doctors and the religion and pretty much everywhere that that it's okay, and in many cases that we need to eat meat, dairy products, eggs, and other animal-based foods. And so we eat that because we're little kids. If I'm born into a society, I speak whatever language they speak, and I eat whatever food they eat. It's not my choice. I just have to do it. We just become like our parents and teachers. So it's not something we ever choose. So one of the most important things to realize is that no one is eating, if they're eating animal-based foods, no one is doing it out of a free choice. We're just doing it because we're following orders. We're just doing what we were told to do. And everybody is doing it, so we just do it. But it has a dark side. It causes a lot of suffering to animals. Environmentally, it's very harmful. It makes us less healthy, I've discovered. And it closes down our spirituality because it lowers our vibration. The vibratory level of our consciousness gets lower. And so we're more involved with fear and anger and despair and misery and violence because we're eating that, we're causing that. When I take out my wallet, like I reach back here and take out my wallet, and I have some money. I always like to say that the money I have, those are ballots. That's when we really vote. We're voting, we're telling the system, kill an animal, right? So instead of doing that, we do something else. And the other part of the really good news is that all of the nutrients that are in dairy products and eggs and animal flesh, meat, all of the nutrients, all of the protein and vitamins and minerals, everything, it all came from plants. So we can eat the plants directly and get all those nutrients. We don't have to eat the animals. The animals very often add a lot of toxins. They add saturated fat, they add cholesterol, and all the herbicide, pesticide, and fungicide residues concentrate in dairy products and eggs and animal flesh and meat. So we get a much healthier version of the nutrients. And like I say, I'm now 72, and I have not actually not been to a drugstore. I have not taken one medication in 45 years of anything. I'm just healthy. I've never gone to a doctor or anything. And it's wonderful. I've traveled all over the whole world. I've given over 4,000 presentations in over 50 countries, all 50 states in the United States. My wife too, Madeline, she's also, we never get sick. So it's just, beautiful. Like when we help animals be healthy, we get healthy. So this is really the good news. It's all good news.
Where did you learn all these things? You went on that journey with your brother, without money. But I want to understand, how did all this information, knowledge came to you along the way? You talked about karma, you talk about dharma, you talk about ahimsa, you talk about Bhagavad Gita. I'm curious to understand it about all these learnings. You can hear a word, but to understand it, give the time to understand it, and you do it out of a passion, out of compassion, not something like, somebody would try to learn something and then want to commercialize it.
Well, it was just, I think, this realization, really, that our life is very brief. And I didn't want to just suddenly, because it goes by quickly, be 70 years old and think, oh, what did I do? I spent all my time working in a job to make money and, not really grow spiritually, not awaken out of delusion. And so that was the thing. I just felt that life is very fleeting. That hit me when I was only in my 21 years old. And so that propelled me to start studying the ancient wisdom traditions. And most of the ancient wisdom traditions that come from India, also some from China, they're the words and the example of very highly evolved people who live their lives to bless others. And I saw it also, I had some background in Christianity, and I saw also like Jesus and the great saints of the Christian tradition. They really lived their lives to help others, to be kind and loving and caring. That's always the same teaching, to be kind and loving to others, and also that's the path of happiness. And so I ended up spending many hours in meditation. That was really it. I mean, my brother and I, when we ended up in these meditation centers, we would meditate from like 6 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. We just wanted to attain enlightenment, do it. Ramana Maharshi, like he was our example. And that's all he did. He just went into the silence and go into the silence. And so I think it's really the silence that teaches us. It teaches us more than any words can ever teach us. If we can go into the silence, like Jesus said, go into the closet and shut the door, just be quiet and let our own inner light illuminate our mind, because our mind gets polluted with all the terrible news, all the indoctrination, all the misinformation, and we become slaves to a system that's based on exploiting animals, exploiting nature, exploiting anyone who can be exploited, and that's all of us. So for us to have freedom, what I realized is, for us to have freedom, we have to free others. If I'm going to insist on imprisoning other living beings, I'm going to be imprisoned. That's it. And I don't see why people don't understand that. It's really interesting. To me, it's so clear, so obvious that if we want to be happy and healthy, we should let those others be happy and healthy, help them become happy and healthy, then we'll be happy and healthy. If we're going to insist on stealing their happiness and stealing their health, stealing their baby, stealing their milk, stealing their purpose, we lose our purpose, we lose our health, we lose our families, we lose everything. So it's a basic teaching. It goes back to the roots of in India. And it's something that we all know in our bones, but we've forgotten it. And our whole society helps us to forget it. So we just go around trying to help people remember this ancient wisdom. But most people are too busy, running around. And the other thing is most people don't want to be different from the people around them. Their family, their friends, at work, the boss. So I didn't worry about that. I didn't care what people thought. I didn't care about the work and the boss and the family. I just thought this is the most important thing. No matter what, this is the most important thing. And then gradually I got more friends that felt the same way and more, so you just accumulate a circle of friends and we create our own community. So it's really about the power of community. The Buddha taught that. He said the most powerful thing is the people we associate with. We become like the people we associate with. So that's why there are monasteries where people would go. Like when I was in Korea in this monastery, it was beautiful. We would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and meditate till 9 o'clock at night. It was really a whole long day. I took a vow of silence for 3 months, to no talking for 3 months, just going within. And I think it's this community of support is very helpful. So I think, the more people understand this and we create communities of support, like you're doing with your program, like your program is a community of support. You help people come together in a virtual reality and like in a monastery, like where we focus on the truth, focus on the Dharma, focus on the teachings, focus on the ancient wisdom, focus on the underlying capacity that we have to awaken out of delusion and create a positive future for our children. But that's living a life that's worthwhile. If we don't do that, if we just go along and support communities of domination and exploitation, then we're just adding to the problem. We didn't come here and really be part of the solution. So I want to really thank you and thank everyone who's listening, because we are all part of the solution. And it means just every day doing the best we can to question the official narratives that legitimize violence and do the best we can to be a voice of kindness and compassion for others, for future generations, for ecosystems, for animals, for the cells in our own body. Be a voice of compassion for all of those, and we'll be happy, really.
Absolutely. Why is it? What are the challenges that you face in what you want to tell the world in your daily life? You are traveling, if I understand, you are traveling even right now. So I want to understand from that perspective, why don't people want to be happy with this sort of a lifestyle? What are the challenges?
Yeah, you're right. The main challenges, I think, are fear. I mean, fear is really the biggest one. People being afraid, like myself, if I'm afraid of being different or being afraid of being wrong, right? We have to actually admit, well, I was wrong. It wasn't actually a good idea to be eating that way. I'm going to change, or uh, being afraid of not going along with authorities. That's a big thing. Like people say, well, my doctor said I have to eat this. My doctor told me I need to do this. Or the government said, or my husband said, my wife said, or my parents said, so we have these authority figures. We have to be willing, I think, to question authorities. That's a big obstacle. And then questioning what other people think of us too, the group around us, all of our friends and neighbors and relatives, all of that. People, it's this fear really of not being liked, of being rejected, of being judged, and so forth. And even as vegans, we still have to work with that. I've seen that, like in the vegan community, some vegans will say, "Well, you're doing something, you're not doing it the right way," and they attack each other. So the other big obstacle really is the unwillingness to engage in inner work. I see that. A lot of people, even they go vegan and they're very, don't eat meat, dairy, or eggs, but they're still angry and still judgmental. And so we have to do the inner work to have compassion, not just for animals, but for other human beings who maybe say something on Facebook that we don't like, who criticize us, that we be loving and kind to other human beings. That's hard. That's harder than being loving to cows and pigs and chickens because they don't criticize us. So it's really those are the two things really. And I think becoming being willing to do the inner work, to be humble, to just say, I don't know everything. I'm open to learning. I may be wrong about this, and listening to others and not trying to be right. All of these things, and not trying to change other people. That's a big problem too. Like as vegans, we think, well, I'm right, you're wrong, you're not a vegan. I'm going to try to change you. And then people resist, which of course they would. If someone came up to me and said, well, you're wrong, I'm right, you should be like me. The natural healthy thing is to fight back and say, wait a minute. And so we have to realize that the only one we can change is myself. As soon as I try to change someone else, that's kind of like violent. I'm going to change you. I shouldn't try to change. If I change myself, that's what that's what the great sages did. They didn't go around trying to change the world. They realized, like Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change, ourselves. That's the thing. And that's much easier to blame everybody else and want to change them. It's much harder to actually root out the evil in my own heart. And that's, I think, really what this is all about, actually.
Absolutely. Have you visited India,
Yes,
Dr. Will?
yes, yes. Yeah. My wife and I came to India in, I think it was in 2018. And we did a big lecture tour all over India. We started in Mumbai, and there was a 1 week long vegan veg fest, and I spoke at that. And then we went to many other cities. I kind of forget the names, but they were, but many cities in southern Chennai and Delhi and Calcutta and many cities up in the north. Um, yeah, so where the Jains are and all around. We had a friend from India who has um, a group that's a vegan sattva group, and he set it all up through his contacts. And very often I played the piano too, because that's one of the things I'm a musician, I'm a composer, so I would play a piano concert or play a few pieces, and then I would give lectures. And a lot of it was on television. It was televised on the TV. So it was wonderful. And I met so many beautiful people who are moving in that direction. I remember this one person, pretty influential person, and he was saying that India right now is the most vegetarian country in the world, but there's still the dairy. He said, but when people realize the connection between dairy and ahimsa and so forth, then the whole country will very quickly go vegan, and it'll be the biggest vegan country in the world. It's just a matter of helping people understand that we don't need to imprison the cows, and that we can get plenty of calcium from greens and from grains, and that will make people a lot healthier, because India has, I think, one of the highest rates of diabetes in the world, and that's directly a result of a lot of dairy consumption. So I think it's a beautiful country. I mean, we had a wonderful time there, really.
Absolutely. So at one point in time, you wondered where will you find vegetarians, and this time when you came to India, you found a lot of them. Did they ask you anything? You told them anything in particular?
Well, my mission was mainly to encourage the people in India who have such a deep, rich culture. Number one, to go back to the roots. You go back to the roots of their own culture. There's a tendency sometimes to want to emulate the West, to be like the British, to be like the Americans, they have more technology, they have more money. We want to be like them, but they have more problems too. We have a lot of problems. So I encourage them to go back to the roots of their Indian wisdom, and also to really question the dairy, because I think there was back in the in the 1990s and so forth, there was the white revolution, which really was a big push by the government to increase dairy consumption, put a lot of money into that, but a lot of that came from the United States dairy industry. The United States pharmaceutical industry was kind of giving a lot of money and kind of promoting that, and it's not in the best interest for the people. It's in the best interest for the pharmaceutical industry, the medical industry, the dairy industry, but it's really not the best for the people and not the best for the cows either. So I was encouraging them to realize that we can get all the nutrients we need and maybe have different type of milk, maybe like more plant-based milks of various kinds, coconut milk and so forth, that can be made. And so I think, it takes time for this to happen, but I think it's a good trajectory. It's happening.
Absolutely, Dr. Will. So, talking of industry, a lot of people have this view that even veganism is a big industry now. You became a vegan many years back. People did not know much about it at that point in time, but now veganism people talk about. Many people represent vegan industry. People who will benefit. How do you look at the real veganism and the industry view about veganism so that they can sell everything that they want to?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. That's a kind of a deep question, because when I first became a vegan, there was no there was no vegan cheese, vegan ice cream, vegan milk, vegan eggs, vegan burgers, vegan hot dogs, vegan meat. Wasn't none of that. We just ate vegetables and grains, fruits, nuts, seeds, legumes, potatoes, sweet potatoes. We just ate plant-based foods, and I think we were much healthier. And so once it became a market, gradually as veganism started growing, then these big businesses started coming in and they started marketing foods that are not healthy. Been a big problem, especially in the last, I think, 5 or 6 years. More recently, big money's come in, and there's all these so-called vegan foods that are ultra processed, very highly processed. They have, excuse me, they have quite a lot of chemicals, preservatives, artificial flavors. They're not organically grown, and they're not healthy. And so I've seen it happen where in the older days, 20 years ago, the vegan movement had the high ground. We were the healthiest, we were the most ethical, we had the moral high ground, the health high ground. But then gradually we were brought down, and people now, even you see it maybe on Facebook or other social media, people say, wow, I went to the vegan section of the grocery store. I bought all these vegan foods. I got some vegan ice cream. I got some vegan cheese. I got some vegan burgers and hot dogs and meat and bacon, vegan bacon, all this vegan food. I'm eating that now. And then 6 months later, they say, oh, I'm eating all this vegan food and I really feel pretty sick. I'm just, I don't feel very good. And then they go back to eating some meat and dairy and they say, oh, I feel better now. That vegan food is really processed. It's not very healthy. And so the whole movement is now lost a lot of its health aspect, I think. So I would encourage people. I know it's very nice in a way. If you're eating meat, then you can eat some vegan meat. But I would suggest, only do that for maybe a few days or a week, and and get back to eating the way our ancestors ate. Eat grains, eat rice and vegetables and fruits and grains and nuts and of various kinds, seeds. These foods are healthy. Eat food more in the natural state. It's good to try to eat organically grown food. There's a lot of chemicals are sprayed on the food. We get those chemicals, so it's good to eat organic, but whole foods as much as possible. And that's what we do. And I think that's one of the secrets why we're healthy, is that we're minimizing the amount of toxins in the food, because there's so many toxins now really in the air, the food, the water. And so it's good to be aware of that and try to not buy foods that are too processed, and go and and make food. I mean, one of the things I realized when I was in India is that there's a wonderful tradition of Indian cuisine, and really spending time in the kitchen and making food. I mean, to me, the women in India are the greatest cooks in the whole world. I mean, they're amazing. I mean, I was amazed. They would go in and spend hours creating fantastic foods that are really nutritious and delicious. And there's a tradition in India, which is very precious, which is the understanding of prana, of energy. You know, prana, like the woman knew that when they're cooking and preparing the food, they're putting prana into the food, their love. They're putting their love into the food. And so when they're feeding their family their food that they're making, they're not just feeding them the physical food, they're feeding the energy of love is in the food. And the culture understands that. But then the Western culture comes in and says, oh, no, that's not true. There's no prana. That's all a bunch of hypnotism and superstition. Just eat the food. And so, and then more and more you have food coming out of factories where there's no good prana. You know, it's just machines and and chemicals and matter, you know, and that's not good. You know, in the old days, people grew their food, they farmed the food, they had their markets, they got the food, they had love in the food, they had love for the soil, they had love for the land, they had love for each other, and they're eating love, and that makes you much healthier. See, Madeline and I, we grow our own food. We have a food forest. We have 80 fruit and nut trees, and we grow a lot of vegetables and things. So we realize the more love we put into the garden, the more love we give to the earth, the more the earth loves us back. And with healthy food, that's not just food, it's actually medicinal. It's actually, I think if you really love trees, for example, and they're giving fruits, if you do that year after year after year, pretty soon the tree gets to know you, and you give love to the tree, and pretty soon the tree is giving food specially just for you. Because we do that. We all the compost, everything, even quite honestly, even our urine, all our urine goes into it goes back, the nitrogen. It's very healthy. And it goes in and it feeds the tree, and then the tree feeds us, and we feed the tree. Now, this is a relationship that people knew about for thousands of years. But then in the West, they forgot all that. They had a whole society based on domination of animals and domination of nature, and use chemicals and just kill the pests. And big machines come in and they just sell this food like it's just cement. They treat the animals like they're just cement. I mean, that's no way to have health. Then the pharmaceutical industry comes in. Everybody's sick, so they make more money. The sicker people get, the more money they get, and the more money they get, the more they promote the system. They go into the schools, the education, they teach the doctors, don't worry about food, just give them drugs. The whole medical system, the whole governmental system, it all gets taken over. So what we have to do is just understand there's a lot of money in sick people. There's a lot of power and domination. But if we love our families and love animals and love nature and give love to the world and to our families, and cook with love and eat with a sense of gratitude. Don't eat while we're looking at the phone and eat while we're arguing and fighting. You know, traditionally, meal was a time when people came together and loved each other and talked together, and they didn't talk about all the problems in the world. They talked about how happy they are. And when we do that, we are much healthier. So it really means going back to the ancient wisdom and living in harmony with each other and with nature. And when we do that, we create a foundation for a healthy life. And I think that's really what veganism really should be about, not this new kind of convenient, quick thing where it's just a machine and you just eat it and run, and while you're working on your cell phone at the same time. You know, we have to have the whole deeper understanding.
Absolutely, absolutely, Dr. Will. So you connect food with, world peace, and that is where your book, The World Peace Diet, comes in. Tell us a bit about this connection that you want to tell about, and what is this book all about? Who is this book for?
Right. Well, the World Peace Diet is really for anyone who would like to understand the deep structure of our culture that we're living in today in the world, and that food is our most intimate connection with nature and with our society. So when we look deeply into our food, it's the greatest adventure of self-discovery we can make, because we're not just looking at food, we're looking into the whole relationship that we have with animals, with nature, with the cosmos, with the source of all life. And so that's what I did with the World Peace Diet. And so just briefly, I went into the history of this and how basically 10,000 years ago, everyone ate, before 10,000 years ago, everyone ate a plant-based diet. Maybe there was a little hunting and fishing, but it was a plant-based diet. And then 10,000 years ago, for the very first time, people started to own animals as property for food. That's called herding. They started herding animals. And it was wild sheep at first, and then wild goats. And then about 2,000 years later, cows, wild cows. They started owning them as property. And this was a great revolution. This was the greatest revolution ever in the history of our society. And it was a revolution that changed everything. It was a slow revolution. It took thousands of years, but gradually animals went from being mysterious and respected cohabitants of the earth with us to being mere commodities that are bought and sold by the pound. And so they're just turned into, just like I say, objects, sacks of cement. You buy and sell them by the pound. And that revolution, that huge change, initiated about 5 things. Number one, animals were reduced to either objects that you buy and sell or to being pests. Oh, we got to get rid of the wolves. We got to get rid of the tigers. We got to get rid of all these animals that might hurt our cows and our pigs and our other goats and sheep. Got to kill all them. And then, so animals were reduced. And then that also gave rise, for the very first time on planet Earth, of a wealthy elite class, this rich, the super rich. And they were super rich and powerful for only one reason, because they owned capital. Capita is the old Latin word that means head, like head of sheep and goats and cows. So these early rich people, I used to teach college courses in the ancient teachings, the oldest writings, the Epic of Gilgamesh, all these old writings. And you can see these kings, and the kings are powerful, and they're rich, and they control their whole society because they have wealth, and the wealth is livestock. That's what the wealth is livestock. And then they invented two things that we still have with us now because of this. Number one is war. The oldest word for war on planet Earth is the old Sanskrit word gavya. It comes from the root go, which means cow. And gavya means the desire for more cows. That's the oldest word for war. It was when a king would see another king with a lot of livestock and land, and he'd say, well, I want that livestock. So he would go with a bunch of men, and they would fight to get that livestock, to get the capital, the wealth. And the other ones would fight back. And so he had these, for the very first time, these big wars. And whoever lost the war, it was terrible for them, because not only did the cows and other livestock become the property of the victor, but the people became the property of the victor. So you had the beginning of slavery, people owning other people. And so we have animal agriculture being the source of a wealthy elite class that dominates everybody else, of war, of slavery, and also of the domination of women, because the underlying practice of animal agriculture is not just killing the animals and imprisoning them, but the third thing is you have to impregnate them against their will, breed them. You have to breed them. And the more you breed them, the more babies you have, the more babies you have, the more wealth you have. So it's all about impregnating females. So gradually women's status dropped also, and women gradually began to be seen merely as breeders, just to give us what we want, give us sons, give us what we want. And so we had the arising of these very sort of violent, warlike, patriarchal societies in the ancient world that started conquering the other societies around them, and that were less violent and more plant-based. And this spread from the Eastern Mediterranean to Central Asia to Europe, and then all over the whole world. It spread through the colonial period, this whole meat-eating society, violence, and also it was hard on not only on women but also on men, because boys were raised that they have to be tough and hard and insensitive and capable of violence and be warriors, dominate women, dominate nature, dominate each other. And so it created a society that we see today in many ways. It's based a lot on violence towards animals and towards the weak by the strong. So what veganism is really is a resurrection of the sacred feminine dimension of consciousness, the compassion and kindness and caring, which is in all of us, whether we're men or women. It's that rising up again and creating and co-creating a society of kindness and caring for other living beings, and getting back to the ancient wisdom before we started herding animals and imprisoning them. So that's really the world peace diet, is understanding how all this fits together. It's very interesting and it's very empowering, I think, once we understand it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Talking of consciousness, long back, along with your brother, you wanted to attain that high level of consciousness. Have you achieved that, or it's still in the works?
It's still in the works. I mean, I've had my aha moments and some wonderful breakthroughs, and I'm very grateful for the underlying joy and freedom in my consciousness, and realizing that really our consciousness is like the infinite sky. That we have clouds that, the clouds of our conditioning come and go, but our true nature is like the sky. It's infinite and eternal and radiant and self-luminous, and that's our true nature. And we're here for a few short decades to unfold that for the benefit of all living beings. And every day is another opportunity we can be grateful to learn and grow and unfold more, ever more. There's no end to it. We can always be more enlightened, I think, always be more awake.
Absolutely. There is so much to learn from you about all this, Dr. Bill, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, learn more from you, about your books. What's the best way for them to do so?
Probably the best and easiest way is just to go to our website, which is World Peace Diet. Like you said before, worldpeacediet.com, just worldpeacediet.com, or my name, willtuttle.com. That goes to the same place. So we are happy to welcome people on our website. We have on the website videos of my teachings and classes, and also my wife, Madeline, her intuitive kitchen, lots of recipes and so forth that are really nutritious and delicious. Our tour schedule, where we're going to be, our training. We have an online training called the World Peace Diet Facilitator Training. So there's lots of things there. People can, our music, Madeline's art. We believe in spreading the message through beauty and beautiful music that's uplifting and inspiring, beautiful paintings that show the beauty of animals and nature, and spirituality that shows the beauty of the human spirit, that we're here to love each other and be kind and caring, and to question all these official narratives that promote disease and conflict. So we welcome anyone and everyone. We have a mailing list there and so forth.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, AJ. Thank you so much, everyone. Much love, and go forth and multiply this wonderful message. Thank you.